Greetings and welcome to an orchestratemplates.com sample quickie. Today we'll have a look at Cinematic Studio solo strings. Aussie mastermind Alex Wolbank and his team with Cinematic Studio Strings 2 established a workflow paradigm that has been brought to perfection in the Cinematic Studio series. Strings, solo strings, piano and brass are odd, and leave big things to hope for woodwinds and percussion. But we are dealing with the solo strings here, and there's plenty to deal with. Cinematic Studio series provided me with an NFR of Cinematic Studio solo strings. There is no known direct or indirect affiliation with anyone involved with the product, and everything said in this video is my personal opinion, not influenced by any third party. Cinematic Studio Solo Strings is a direct download from the developer's website, cinematicstudioseries.com, and it is delivered via their bespoke downloader. Download size is 35GB. After installation, the installed library is 35GB too, so during download and installation you need about 70GB of free space temporarily. The library needs Contact 5.6.8 or higher. We are looking at version 1.1 today, which introduced classic legato patches, which are similar to the legato used in Cinematic Strings 2. CSSS, as the library is often abbreviated, uses the same workflow and UI paradigm that made Cinematic Strings 2 a big success. There's 5 general patches, one per instrument for violin 1, violin 2, viola and cello, as well as a full ensemble patch, which exists also as a separate light version. The aforementioned classic legato patches added in 1.1 double the patch count. CSSS does not have a base, and with only those 5 patches, or 10 if you also load the classic legato, the library is very easy to integrate. CSSS relies heavily on key switching and articulation selection through MIDI CCs, which is defining its UI. All patches have 3 parts. You have microphone and reverb controls on the left, the articulation selector in the middle, reachable via adjustable key switches or a definable MIDI CC. And you have articulation-dependent controls here on the right. CSSS is intended to be used with 1 track per instrument, not by having 1 articulation per MIDI track. All patches have identical articulations and features, some of which are a bit hidden and only reachable via MIDI CC. We'll go through all articulations and jump between instruments. Everything said applies to all instruments. All instruments have 3 mic positions, close, main and room, as well as a mix of the former that is good to save resources. The full ensemble uses the mix samples and provides volume sliders for the individual 4 instruments in place of the mic positions. All positions can be routed to individual outputs by clicking on the little triangle on the bottom here. Let's look at the cello patch. Default key switches for articulation start at Z0. They do for all the 4 core instruments. Starting with the sustains, here are all 4 possible mic positions, starting with a mix. All long articulations offer legato. The sustain has 2 legato variants, standard and advanced. Standard has medium and fast legato transitions, advanced adds a slow transition type. This legato system is what makes the Cinematic Studio series pretty special. Legato styles are triggered by velocity. The higher the velocity, the faster the attack chosen. Slower attacks come with a sizable delay, 333 milliseconds, 250 milliseconds and 100 milliseconds respectively, which takes some getting used to. Standard feels most natural after a bit of practice, and I like it better than the classic legato patches. It is true that CSSS requires a bit of practice to master the system, but it is well worth it. Tremolo, trills, and harmonics are quite standard. They too offer scripted legato and can also benefit from the pretty good concertino emulation. The measured tremolo can sync to host tempo or use manual tempo, which works great. It is more a repetition ricochet-like articulation rather than a classical tremolo, but it does its job admirably. Maccato introduces a spiccato overlay that makes punchier attacks and varied playing possible. While this feature is awesome in the other cinematic series instruments, with solo strings it counters the realism a bit, because there are two instruments playing audibly. A similar complaint could be leveled at the full ensemble, which is why I generally prefer the individual instruments. The shorts, grouped under staccato and pizzicato articulations, present quite a unique UI and workflow paradigm. Both articulations serve as headers for sub-articulations, the mod wheel under both switches between these articulations, which takes some getting used to, but especially for staccato, is the best control scheme I've ever seen for this kind of articulations. Grouping Bartok pizz and Collegno together the same way with regular pizzicato most likely is a decision owed to running out of UI space, because these articulations generally are not altered between frequently while playing. But for spiccato, staccatissimo, staccato, and sforzato, the workflow is extremely nice and allows whole passages in one fell swoop with correct articulation switches. An assignable MIDI CC switches between vibrato and non-vibrato, with a very nice transition between the two. Yet it is an on-off switch, not a gradual crossfade. Soft velocities in the legato trigger a portamento, though this is curiously absent if non-vibrato samples are used. Portamento can be enabled or disabled via another MIDI CC, to avoid always triggering portamento when playing softly. You would use CSSS for anything where solo strings are required. Whether for true solo parts or to give more detail to sections in the first chair's capacity, CSSS will work fine. But provided articulations cover all the basics and then some. Expressive solo works might be hampered by the lack of more special articulations, but that is clearly not the focus of the product and would complicate what is a terrific workflow. So you can keep the use cases nice and simple. Anything where you want solo strings, do not need a bass, and can make do with the articulations that are there. The full ensemble does great for sketching. The whole Cinematic Studio series shows its power when the user bends to its will. Over the top as that sounds, CSSS really works best if you keep one instrument per track. Make heavy use of the key switches and articulation choosers provided, and use choice MIDI CCs to shape the performance. So the ease of integration depends on how similar your workflow is to Alex Warbank's brain, or how much you are willing to adapt. You can route mic positions to different outputs with ease, but routing different articulations to different outputs would require multiple copies of each patch, as would having articulations on separate tracks. Key switches and MIDI CCs can be changed easily enough, with very handy shift-click assignments possible here. Alt-click unloads any articulation slot. You can reload it by just clicking on the slot again normally, left-click, which helps save memory when you do not need a specific articulation at all. The CC assignments are neatly grouped and the list is mercifully short and to the point. No glaring omissions are apparent as far as remote controlling the instruments go, and the feature set is consistent between patches, not requiring memorizing what a particular patch or cannot do. Once set up, you'll likely never need to look at the patches again, making CSSS ideal for residing on a slave machine and being your silent weapon for all things solo strings. For the alternatives, the respective orchestral solo strings from the other full orchestra developers are obvious candidates. They are Cinestring Solo from Cinesamples, within strings first chairs from Orchestra Tools, and the solo strings as well as the Coney strings from Spitfire Audio. All have their own focus, but the major difference is the UI and workflow of CSSS, which might be the best compromise between being most suited for rapid prototyping as well as fleshing things out later. Cinesamples' offering also leans heavily on the easy-to-use side, while Spitfire's and Orchestra Tools entries lean more towards deprogramming. CSSS is for solo strings obviously, and it serves well to cover the most used parts these instruments are required to play. Through the varied mic positions and a resource-friendly mix mic that will generally do the job just fine, it is a relatively lightweight addition to any template that will be able to convincingly pull off solo strings duties within a larger ensemble. Whether it can hold its own in solo pieces depends on the skill of the programmer, but it will certainly give any other such library a run for its money in doing so. I hope you found this overview of Cinematic Studio solo strings useful. Let me know your feedback in the comments. If you liked this video, please subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon, so you'll be notified of new videos. Take care and see you soon.